Hello, and welcome to the program. This is the Black Ponder. I'm the host of the show. My name is Neil Trotter, and today in this episode, this video, we're going to be talking about anarchism, anarchist philosophy, political philosophy, and we're going to do that via a discourse off of this essay here. It is called, okay, let me put it up close. Anarchism and Christianity by Marlow. So this essay is about how the Bible actually supports anarchist thought and anarchist action. I assume, when it was written, lots of people were using the Bible to justify state power and why we should listen to our politicians and our government officials. Referencing how the people followed kings and queens in the Bible, and how they followed state rule, and probably referencing examples of how the people followed these kings and the people followed these rules of these rulers, and so we should follow those rulers too, right? And so I'm guessing Marlow was trying to fight against that, where this author brings up examples in the Bible of prophets, significant figures in the Bible, going against the ruling power or the ruling state, the ruling class, to follow the ultimate rule of God, right? Or the ultimate, what God's wishes. Like, okay, God's wishes is the most important, right? And therefore that should be over what the state says, right? And Marlow references a lot of examples to, my opinion, varying degrees of success. The thing is, the Bible is, you can interpret it in a many different ways. And that's kind of the thing about the Bible, right? And so that's not really what I want to focus about. Like that, I just want to say that we're going to focus on something else that I feel like this essay really does shine on. I don't think it really shines on okay, I'm going to give you this definitive proof or this very convincing argument that actually there are many examples in the Bible where anarchism is the preferred method of how God wants us to act, right? Yeah, that's true, but there's plenty of examples in the Bible where you can easily interpret oh no, actually God wants you to follow the kings and the state and the political structure, and I can see lots of people running with that, and it's kind of you can kind of go back and forth with that, and the interpretation is kind of loose. Marlow does mention several examples. Then he also says at the end, this is only a very beginning level, surface level examination, not really thorough, because it's an essay, right? You would need to really make a book that's within the 400 plus page mark to really start giving adequate interpretation, at a level of convincing argument, more of a theological examination, I would argue. I think though where this essay really shines is when we're talking about the definition of anarchism. What is anarchism? What is it? Because I am trying to figure that out myself, and I personally know several anarchists, and they tell me, based on which anarchist I'm talking to, they give me a different example or a different explanation of what anarchism is, and I'm just trying to figure it out. I work with anarchists in a lot of social activism, and I'm just trying to get a good idea of the political philosophy. I still don't consider myself an anarchist, but I think this essay does a very good job defining or providing a definition that's not complete, but is quite extensive. Something where I can work off of, like a foundation. That's all I'm trying to say. So I would like to read to you the definition, how Marlow defines anarchism. And we've seen this before. Actually, I did a video with Noam Chomsky on his essay, "What is Anarchism?" Right. So this is the third paragraph here of this essay. Let me explain. I'll read the quote. Anarchism is the extreme skepticism of all forms of social hierarchy and entrenched and coercive institutional authority. Okay? Chomsky mentioned that too, although this essay is written before that essay. So, I'm seeing a consistency in the definition. Extreme skepticism, okay, in social hierarchies. When you see power structures with hierarchies that are involved in social structures, there's a skepticism there. Like, okay, what's going on here? I'm not just going to take this at face value. We need to examine this. And then further, when you're using institution of coercion to exert authority, right, over people, like that's anarchism is about that. Okay, that's a good foundation. I mean, that could be many things other than anarchism, but I mean that could just be skepticism, right? But okay, let's continue now. Emma Goldman, Marlow references Emma Goldman here, and we did several videos here at the Black Ponder about her works. But Emma Goldman, in her essay Anarchism, defines it as the theory that all forms of government rest on violence and are therefore not only wrong and harmful, but also unnecessary. Now, listen to this. Anarchy is broader than this, however. Okay? So it's not just a rejection of government. It's more to it than that. It views the nature of power as essentially malignant. Okay. Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Right. So power inherently is, or essentially is the word Marlow uses, malignant. Okay. It is in opposition to all coercive forms of cultural, economic, social, and political authority, i.e. those forms of authority which maintain obedience through violence or the threat of negative sanctions. Thus, as Rudolf Rocker elegantly puts it, Rudolf Rocker, I'm not familiar, but that's somebody I can look up. Must be an anarchist thinker. I love how essays do the name dropping, or text in general. They just start dropping you names, which is good, right? You gotta cite your sources. But so, it's often the case, like, who are you talking about? Right? But there you go. Rudolf Rocker elegantly puts it, power operates only destructively, bent always on forcing every manifestation of life into the straitjacket of its laws. Its intellectual expression is dead dogma, its physical form brute force. And this unintelligence of its objectives sets its stamp on its supporters also and renders them stupid and brutal, even when they were originally endowed with the best of talents. One who is constantly striving to force everything into a mechanical order at last becomes a machine himself and loses all human feeling. Okay, yeah, so what's being said here essentially is, power is inherently destructive and it's corrosive, and once you have power, you will eventually become corrupted by it, right? And so any type of institution of power, you have to be skeptical of, right? Because power corrupts. That's anarchism. Okay. Let me continue reading though. So, anarchy maintains that the abolition of social hierarchy is essential in establishing a society based on equality and individual liberty. While theories on how this society might be structured are complex and diverse, the most common element uniting them is the replacement of state authoritarianism with some form of non-government cooperation between free individuals. Usually this takes the form of self-governing, decentralized, directly democratic, community-based assemblies. Okay. And there are confederations. These flax roots community bodies would function on the principles of self-help, mutual aid, and voluntary cooperation, and will be linked cooperatively through federation to other autonomous communities from the local to the bioregional to the global level. Naturally, socialization of the major means of production and economic self-management are primary. The aim is to replace the pyramidal, okay, that's the first time I've seen that word, pyramidal, pyramid structure, hierarchy of the modern state with an organic sphere. Okay, yeah, that's a good image. That's a good image. Instead of like that, you know, what they call it, pyramid scheme, instead of like the pyramid structure of power, it's a sphere, right? Where everybody has equal say, right, in a democratic way. The true diffusion of power. Oh, okay. So I'm just gonna stop there because after that he starts like talking about different people in the Bible and different like occurrences in the Bible. Like, well, this actually proves that anarchism is favored in Christianity and the Bible, and it's like, you can interpret that in different ways. That wasn't too convincing for me, but you know, if you would like to talk about that in the comments section below, feel free. I'm more than willing to talk to you about that. You know, it would be nice. I would like that the Bible supported, more anarchist kind of thinking. That would be cool. But I mean, there are instances where that happened. But I can easily reference instances that happened in the Bible where it's like, there's favoritism toward state power. But the issue that I thought the essay did a lot better at presenting was the definition of anarchism. And yeah, that was a great definition, that, you know, a thorough definition that I haven't encountered often, even with like anarchists I meet. But I'm still on the fence, or I'm not even on the fence. I'm still not an anarchist. Sure, I do agree 100%. Power, you know, ultimately corrupts a person. I think, you know, people who have compassion and kindness, you know, or the strength of character can use power responsibly, but even that needs to be, managed, regulated, and limited in ways, right? Because people are human and they make mistakes unintentionally and oftentimes intentionally, right? Right. And I don't mean to like frame it in like that kind of, in a way that's kind of simplistic like that, kind of like a Star Wars dark side, light side, and you see like instances where like with Star Wars where Luke Skywalker is really powerful, and then he kind of tosses his lightsaber on the side because he's like, I give this power up because it's ultimately going to corrupt me, so I give it up. That kind of framing is simplistic. I mean, it is a good opening, or a starting point. A lot of these fictional stories kind of open the door to that kind of deeper discussion of like, does power ultimately corrupt an individual? Can power be managed in a hierarchical way that is not destructive? Let's think of some examples. I just think of examples, and I'm not, this is more open to discussion. If you would like to comment below and we could talk it through, because I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to learn. Just examples. For instance, anarchist structure. Let's think about climate change, for instance. Climate change. We know. Scientific research has shown that we need to reduce our fossil fuel emissions, CO2 emissions, to reduce the global effects of climate change. So right, so let's use that as an example. Or we need to somehow, CO2 needs to be reduced, our output, human beings output. So okay, that's something that affects everybody, right? Because we're starting to see these environmental disasters happening that are fueled off of the actions of humanity, right? And so, right, how is that managed in an anarchist framework? Because what if if societies are operating independently? What if some societies say, we're just going to continue outputting fossil fuel, and we don't care what everybody else thinks. That's our right. Haha. And, right, and so the problem is that society outputs the CO2. They use a fossil fuel, and it hurts. Like, they're not only hurting themselves, they're hurting everybody else. Who's like, maybe everybody else is in agreement, like, okay, we need to reduce this, but there's a few societies that are like, no, we're not doing that. so without like a hierarchical like power framework, like how does that come into play? Like, I'm not saying that what we have now is working. I'm not saying that, but things like that. I'm saying, another example, abortion access, right? Which interestingly is kind of like that now. Personally, I think it's good that abortion access is accessible, and affordable and safe. So I see it as a form of healthcare. And honestly, I think all human beings should have that access, right? And I think when we deny that to any society, then it hurts everybody, right? Don't you? Maybe you don't think that, right? But so what if how is that going to work out? So it's kind of like how it is now in the United States, how abortion is illegal now in some states, but legal in other states. However, one could argue like, well, actually, shouldn't healthcare be accessible to everybody? But then some people would be like, well, abortion is not healthcare, right? But the science and the sociological research shows that actually when you deny abortion access, the society actually suffers adverse health effects, right? So it is an issue of healthcare, but then so how is that managed, right? When societies can kind of do whatever they want, and there's no like overall structure that's saying, okay, no, this is the thing that we have all decided, or most of us have decided that is good, and so you're gonna have to adopt this, right? What else? Like, a global pandemic situation. You adopt the kinds of health practices, wear a mask, self-isolate. Sometimes you really gotta do the isolation thing. Other times you don't have to. How is that gonna be managed? Let's say societies are like, okay, wearing a mask is great, but then other societies, they'll say, oh, we're not wearing a mask. We're just not gonna do that, right? And so I'm guessing, like, how does it, if we're operating on an anarchist structure, right, where it's like, okay, this community can do what it needs to do, and then that community can do what it needs to do, and there's going to be no hierarchy, regulation, or authority that's going to dictate what other societies do. But what if a society like in that example, like, okay, this society is not wearing a mask, or they're not practicing safe health measures that drastically reduce the spread of the virus. Not only is that going to hurt that society, that risks everybody, all the other societies, because of what they're doing. So then how do we enforce things that help the world on societies that refuse to not do it? Right? That's where the conundrum is for me in anarchism. I think it's very good in many instances, but there's also pretty significant instances where like that theory is just not gonna, it doesn't work. You know what I mean? Like, but maybe I'm missing something. Maybe somebody could say like, oh, actually there's a way that we can do this that isn't coercive, or that isn't like based off of hierarchy, but I'm not seeing it. So explain that to me. That's all I'm saying. If you're an anarchist, I would like to know. But overall, it's a very good political philosophy. I see a lot of benefits from it, and as I work with anarchists and social activist organizations, there's a lot of things that we do in our organization as anarchists, like the decentralization and the true democracy, where it's like not like fake democracy, like our government in the United States type of thing, and that's cool. Committee based, action based off a consensus. That's good, but what if like somebody decides not to consent, right? But they're not consenting off something that hurts other people, right? What happens then? That's all I'm asking. So this is more of a discussion, opening the floor. I'm not trying to say like anarchism bad. I'm just trying to understand it. And if you could clear it up for me, drop a comment, or maybe you kind of share some of those questions with me. You're like, yeah, that's something they don't really have an answer for, or the philosophy doesn't have an answer for, or or you do, or maybe there is an answer you want to share. Please comment below. But anyway, that's why I just wanted to drop this video and spark a discussion about anarchism. Hopefully we get to talk in the comment section below. But until next time, you've been watching The Black Ponder. Tune in next time for more philosophical thought.